Gang culture in the United States is a highly prevalent phenomenon in many urban areas across the country, and one of its most prominent elements is the type of cars they choose to drive. While different gangs in different places might have their tastes, certain makes and models have come to symbolize gang culture across the years. While many might claim that this is purely a construct of the Hollywood movie industry, there is no denying that it has some basis in reality, as illustrated by the plethora of gang-related incidents that they feature in. Let's take a look at some of the most popular vehicles among the gangs and gangsters of America. Number 5. Chevrolet Monte Carlo. The first-generation Monte Carlo was produced by Chevrolet in 1970 as an answer to the luxury coupes dominating the market, such as the Pontiac Grand Prix. They seem to have finally got it right with their third and fourth generations, at least that is, as far as the gangsters were concerned. The Monte Carlo's name is taken from the region within Monaco of the same name. Monte Carlo translates to Mount Charles in Italian. Movie buffs will no doubt have noticed the vehicle driven by lead actor Denzel Washington in the classic 2001 feature film Training Day. This beautiful car was a modified 1979 Monte Carlo. It had Dayton wire wheels fitted with bullet caps, a Flowmaster exhaust, a Grant steering wheel, and a hydraulic system. Fittingly enough for our subject matter here, the movie revolves around interplay between two narcotics officers, Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, amid the chaotic workings of the gang-ruled neighborhoods of Echo Park, Westlake, and South Central Los Angeles. On January 4, 2014, a young man was driving an SS Monte Carlo through the neighborhood of Compton, California. According to eyewitness accounts, shots rang out before the 34-year-old Torreson McMillan's car went to crash against a fence. According to detectives, the young man in the neighborhood visiting a friend was likely gunned down because of the car he was driving, a red Chevy Monte Carlo. Number 4. Chevy Caprice. The Caprice will live on in history as perhaps the best police cars ever introduced in the United States. Only the Ford Crown Victoria beat it in popularity as a New York City cab, and it grew to become synonymous with the city. The Police Interceptor model of the Chevy Caprice was in production for the decade between 1986 and 1996, and they referred to it as the 9C1. Although it was based on the typical Caprice chassis, higher-grade steel was used in its construction, and the front seats were reinforced with armor plating. An extra 12-volt battery was also included under the hood to power the assortment of police equipment that they ride with. While the third and fourth iterations of the Caprice were preferred throughout ganglands, the Chevy Caprice shot to the national limelight in 2002 when it was associated with the DC Snipers, who were responsible for taking the lives of 10 people, an FBI analyst among them. It also featured in the gang-related incident on September 7, 2008, when a Chevy Caprice traveling along North Cincinnati Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was fired upon by the occupants of a Mercury Marquise. As it turned out, this was a case of mistaken identity, with the aggressors mistaking the occupants of the Caprice for members of a rival gang. Rather than gang members, the Caprice contained a group of 4 teenagers, and they were all hit by bullets. Adrian Crutcher was paralyzed in the incident and was left in a wheelchair. Jamal Bryant took a bullet to the chest that collapsed one of his lungs. Jeremy Williams lost an eye. Donovan Crutcher, Adrian's brother, lost his life. He was 16 years old. Number 3. Impala SS, 7th generation. Gangsters worldwide fell immediately in love with the Impala SS when the badge was brought back to life as a concept car during the 1992 Detroit Auto Show. Designed by General Motors designer John Moss, production began in 1994 out of the GM plant in Arlington, Texas. The production model kept much of the characteristics of the concept version aesthetically speaking. Essentially, The car could have been described as a high-performance iteration of the Caprice, which itself was based on the Caprice 9C1 police model. When 1996 came around, GM decided to discontinue their B-body line to free up assembly lines to produce more profitable SUVs. The B-body line comprised the Buick Roadmaster, Chevrolet Caprice, and, of course, the Impala SS. When the last Impala SS rolled out of the assembly line in 1996, GM held a ceremony to mark the occasion. Christopher Wallace, the hip-hop artist known worldwide as the Notorious B.I.G., was sitting at a stop sign in his SUV on the night of March 9, 1997, when a dark-colored Impala SS came to a stop alongside him. According to eyewitness reports, the vehicle's occupant, a black male, drew down his window and fired his blue steel 9mm pistol multiple times at Wallace's vehicle, hitting the rap megastar 4 times. Even though his entourage made haste to get him to the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, the emergency thoracotomy that the doctors performed was not enough to save his life, and he was officially pronounced dead an hour past midnight. At the time of his death, he was only 24 years old. Number 2. Buick Regal, second generation. Few rides will establish your gangster credentials the way a Buick Regal will. The luxury sport coupe came out in 1978 and was an immediate favorite with the gangsters of South Los Angeles, seeing much use in the drive-by retaliatory shootings that took place there throughout the 80s and 90s. The Regal took a more aerodynamic profile by 1981, which allowed it to participate competitively as a race car, notably becoming a favored car choice with teams on the NASCAR circuit. Richard Petty was one of the racing greats that drove it to win the Daytona 500 in 1981. The car was driven to victory in many of the races that took place in the 1981 and 1982 seasons, taking the manufacturer's title for both those years. By the 1980s, the Regal took on the mantle of the most prominent symbol of inner-city gang culture all through the United States. It grew to such notoriety that it was a common phenomenon to hear residents of the most affected neighborhoods referring to the Buick Regal as the casket on wheels, inspired by the ever-increasing reports of people being discovered slumped behind the steering wheels of these cars with multiple gunshot wounds. One widely known example was the incident on the 2nd of April 1997. 3 gang members affiliated with the Four Trade Crips were seated within a black Regal on LA's East 43rd Street when a turquoise sedan pulled up alongside them. A man leaned out of the small car's window with a rifle in hand, and as another passenger sharing the car with him yelled out "Four Tramps," a degenerating term for Four Trade gang members, he let loose with a hail of bullets. Almost 30 bullets hit the Buick, striking all 3 of its occupants, one fatally. Number 1. Oldsmobile Cutlass. The Hispanic and Black gangs of Los Angeles have developed such a close link with the Cutlass that it is almost standard practice for the LAPD to stop and search the model for gang paraphernalia and weapons whenever they come across it. In the eyes of law enforcement and the rival gangs of Los Angeles, the Cutlass is nothing less than a moving target. The Oldsmobile division of General Motors produced the Cutlass range from 1961 to 1999. Initially introduced as an entry-level vehicle, it started as a compact unibody model, but it came into its own as an intermediate body-on-frame car. The compact Oldsmobile F85 line saw the range evolve into a top-trim series all of its own, including a daunting 442 muscle model brought out in 1964, the Cutlass Supreme later on in 1966, the high-performing Hearst Olds 4 years later, and the Vista Cruiser station wagon again in 1968. As the 1980s came around, the Cutlass stood out as a sub-marquee of the Oldsmobile brand, with numerous lines of vehicles rolling out under the now popular name. The gangs of LA were not lagging in their own activities. gradually carving out their own territories within the communities of the Southland areas, with a series of associated murders being a testament to their activities. In Compton, California, a gray four-door sedan cruised by a bus stop rest area on November 19, 2006. A barrage of gunshots rang out from the vehicle towards two seeming bystanders, killing both instantly. LA County Sheriff deputies were able to recover shotgun wadding from the scene, and one of the female fatalities was hit with 3 bullets, in addition to the fatal shot that went through her neck. According to eyewitness accounts recorded by the deputies, the drive-by shooters were in an Oldsmobile Cutlass. This was our list of cars you should never drive in certain neighborhoods.